There is a strange idea in Mormonism that having a body is superior to not having a body. According to the teachings of Mormonism, you come to earth to get a body, so that if you do everything right, you can one day become a god. The general teachings of Mormonism teach that it is necessary to have a body before you can become a god. Though this teaching does have a lot of holes in it, since the Mormon faith will also teach that the Holy Ghost is God, or a god, but does not have a physical body. Bodies, at least the way that we know them, must be fed, must have oxygen, must be kept at a reasonable temperature, must have sleep, etc., etc., or else they will die. Bodies are also very limited. They can only be one place at one time. Bodies such as ours can be contained by physical structures, etc. Spirits, on the other hand, have none of these limitations. I wish that our Mormon friends would do some serious thinking about things like this. The verse that we are looking at goes on to say, quote, "The Holy Ghost has not a body of flesh and bones, but is a personage of spirit. Were it not so, the Holy Ghost could not dwell in us." End quote. With a belief like this, the Holy Ghost would seem to be a more powerful God than the quote-unquote Father and quote-unquote Son, because he can dwell inside of believers while the Father and Son must remain in their bodies. The Bible teaches that God, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit dwells inside of believers. Romans chapter 8, verses 9 through 11, quote, "But ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwell in you. Now if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is none of his. And if Christ be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the Spirit is life because of righteousness. But if the Spirit of him that raised up Jesus from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Christ from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his Spirit that dwelleth in you." End quote. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 6, quote, "One God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all." End quote. The Mormon view of the fall of Adam compared to the Christian view. The Book of Mormon teaches in 2 Nephi chapter 2, verses 22 through 25, quote, "And now, behold, if Adam had not transgressed, he would not have fallen, but he would have remained in the Garden of Eden. And all things which were created must have remained in the same state in which they were after they were created. And they must have remained forever and had no end. And they would have had no children, wherefore they would have remained in a state of innocence, having no joy, for they knew no misery, doing no good, for they knew no sin. But behold, all things have been done in the wisdom of him who knoweth all things. Adam fell that men might be, and men are that they might have joy." End quote. Mormonism actually teaches that it was impossible for Adam and Eve to have had children until after they fell. This is totally contrary to what the Bible teaches in Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 and 28, which says this, quote, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." End quote. God would not tell Adam and Eve to multiply and replenish the earth if it were impossible for them to do, nor would he give them a commandment which could not be obeyed without violating another commandment that he had given them. The fall of Adam is one major area where the Mormon Church is 180 degrees opposite of the Bible teaching. Ultimately, according to Mormon beliefs, Satan was only telling the truth to Adam and Eve in Genesis chapter 3, verses 4 and 5, which says this, quote, "And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." End quote. Mormonism teaches that Adam and Eve, because of their rebellion against the commandment of God, first of all made it possible for the rest of the human race to be born, and secondly made it possible for those who follow Mormonism and its beliefs to become quote-unquote gods. The Mormon teaching on the fall teaches that God was very deceptive with Adam and Eve, giving them a commandment which could not be obeyed unless they broke a second commandment which God had also given them. They teach that God commanded them to multiply and replenish the earth, and that it was impossible to multiply and replenish the earth unless they broke the commandment that God gave them to not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This means that according to Mormonism, God forced man to sin, and then God was angry at man for sinning. The Bible teaches that there was no death until Adam sinned. Since the commandment to multiply and replenish the earth came before the fall, Adam and Eve would certainly have been able to have children before the fall, and those children would never have died, as long as they avoided eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but would have lived in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve in the presence of God for forever. Romans chapter 5, verse 12, quote, "Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned." End quote. God told Eve in Genesis chapter 3, verse 16, quote, "Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." End quote. Eve would now bear children in much pain. Before the fall, childbearing would probably have been completely painless. In this part of this seminar, we have seen some of the doctrines of Mormonism that contradict the Bible. In the next part of this seminar, we will look at a few more of these, and I will share some suggestions for witnessing to Mormons. Please copy and share this presentation with anyone you would like to. Thank you very much for your time.